Hey, everybody, welcome to another edition of the Wake Up Late with Dougie show. I am your host, Dougie Almeida, coming to you live from Simpsonville, South Carolina, where I am blending in. We have a great show today. I'm calling this show and labeling it the International Traveler Show. Two guests, a good friend of mine who's been on the show before, a fellow Coral Springsian, if that's a word, and a new friend I just met and never met, just spoke, and I got to see his face a little bit before. And we're going to join a comedian that traveled the country. Always interesting topic. So without further ado, let's bring on today's guest here on the Wake Up Late with Dougie show. First of all, long timer, my good friend, Mr. Brian Offenther and Slade Ham. What's up, fellas?
What's up? How are you? Good to be here. I'm not a new person.
Nice
I'm
to
just
see
a
you,
new
Dougie.
friend. I've been a person for 40 something.
Yeah. You didn't just fall out of the sky, you know.
No, I've been peopling for a while.
Ancient alien theorists would say yes.
This is
Brian?
my third time, Dougie, being on the show. Does that mean I get like a jacket or something? Like,
Yeah, pretty soon Tom Hanks. Pretty soon, Tom Hanks and Steve Martin are going to come over to your house and share a cigar. So that's the privileges of being on the show. All right. Well, let's get to meet since we never met. Start with Slade here. You're a comedian. You travel the world, as I've looked at stuff. And why don't you tell us a little about who you are and what we need
In
to
a
know?
nutshell, I've been telling stories for 23 years. I do stand-up comedy. I shoot some films. I write books. I've just been literally dodging a real job since I was 18, and I've ended up here, and it's wonderful. 56 countries, I think. You may have me beat, Brian. I enjoy traveling. I enjoy being out there. I enjoy seeing this weird world as a little kid from Southeast Texas who was probably never supposed to get out. Like, I'm supposed to be working Firewatch somewhere in a plant. And, I just got back from Africa. So here we are.
Cool. Brian, let's remind our audience a little bit about you, Mr. Border DJ Breaker.
DJ Bo, no stops, no caps, no brags, just facts. Shanghai's #2 DJ, and so I'm from Coral Springs, just like Dougie. Go back to the old Wake Up Late from Dougie theme, and I moved out to Asia. I lived in Mongolia a couple years, initially with the Peace Corps, and went back to South Florida for a while, and now I'm based in Shanghai. And I DJ, I produce events, I do A&R for record labels, and I edit books. We just have a new book coming out. And this might be the last time I go on Dougie's show because very soon I'll be making my first pro wrestling managing appearance for Middle Kingdom Pro Wrestling here in China. And if it doesn't go the way I want it to with my client, Kyle the Coyote, against Little Johnny, I might get squashed in the mat. But that's not going to happen because Kyle the Coyote is going to #1.
All right. Well, Slade, do you think you can help him out from not getting squashed? Oh, boy. Got to edit that out.
His finisher is the Max Headroom.
I thought the wrestler already put him in a chokehold. Can't say chokehold nowadays. It's a bad expression to be using. Well, welcome to the show. All right.
So it depends on if the person's into it.
Yeah. Well, exactly. Slade. Now you're from Texas. It's interesting. When I was looking at stuff, I just assumed you were from another country. So that's interesting. Now you said you were just in Africa.
Yeah, well, Texas has its. We look at ourselves as a little bit independent. We're not totally, privately we haven't seceded, but up here we've sort of stepped out. No, it was nice. I was in the parts of Africa you wouldn't normally go to if you were going to Africa on purpose. We were in Niger, Kenya, and then Djibouti, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with the country. If you don't know where Djibouti is, it's just south of Jabals. So yeah, that's never not fun to me.
We actually have a comic in South Florida who's from. I think he was based in Djibouti as a military guy. So yeah.
Yeah. Slade documents that really well on his podcast. It was cool. It was a cool listen.
Yeah, we had it's interesting to go to the places where no one ever goes. Like, some of the spots we hit were recent terrorist attacks in the last 5 to 7 years. I think Niger had an incident in Agadez with some special forces guys, and then there were some something that had gone down on the airstrip in Kenya where Al Shabaab had attacked in 2020. So we're the first people getting out there, and I don't know how long. And you can just kind of sense the stir crazy nature of people who have been trapped in one place for 7 months without being able to leave, and it's 112 degrees outside. And you're like, or do the terrorists hate us, or are they just blowing themselves up to cool off? Like this actually.
Get a little breeze. I got to lie to put a chest bomb on just so I can get a little breeze. Fucking nose air.
Exactly. So much warmer.
Yeah, well, I got to hand it to you both. I'm going to ask you, Brian, in a second. But I'm at that point. I mean, I'll travel domestically, but I am not for long flights and going places like that. I had a friend talking about going to Mexico for stem cells. I will never set foot in Mexico again. Just that simple. And you're in Shanghai. I mean, China's the eyes of the world are on China as we speak, and there's my buddy Brian sitting in the middle of it.
Yeah, I mean, I just I have not been to as many nations as Slade. I've DJ'd in 29 nations, although I think I'm about to be the first DJ in every single province in China. I've performed in 40 cities in China so far. To me, like, there's just so much of the world to see, and I'm not going to let inconvenience or things worry me. I know we're going to be talking about danger to travel and things like that, and to me, it's a worthwhile risk because the experiences that you have are just too worthwhile. I've been trying to get Dougie to come out to Asia. He's got a Cambodia connection, and it hasn't happened yet. Although the first time I came to the Wake Up Late for Dougie Studios in Coral Springs, I had brought some Mongolian vodka. I don't think Dougie remembers it very much. Oh, my God. So in tribute to that, I brought some of that.
Yeah, I was speaking Cantonese, Mandarin, I should say, after. I think
it's because your eyes got squinty.
Brian, how do you say I got to take a piss? And you know how to speak that? Yeah.
We'll let them go.
Universal sign, real quick, by the way. Wait, the universal sign. We all know the universal sign of choking is this. Like if you're any country in the world, you're like, I'm fucking choking. And any sign in the world, where's the bathroom? Just grab your dick. Got to piss. Got to piss. Next thing you know, you're in a room with three chicks and a hole in the wall in the bathroom.
I don't start there. That's usually my last resort, but I will grab it if necessary.
Yeah, why not? I mean, I think that's the official sign for pissing. So and you're right. We're going to get into that. Let's actually do that. Let's do the. Let me ask you. You guys tour the country. You've been around. You've been to other places more than I have. You guys were all in Africa and China, and I was in New Smyrna Beach, South Florida, and I was in Myrtle Beach. So that gives you an idea. So, does the rest of the world, do they hate America?
Brian, you can go first. I have my thoughts.
Well, I mean, what I would say is, and I think that let me watch this drop. I think Slade referenced this really well on his end of 2022 podcast, that I think you have to create things, and then if the audience appreciates it, that's kind of a separate thing because it's about the act of creation. Did I summarize your 2022 well? Yeah, I've been checking out your stuff. I appreciate it. I think what's important to remember is that most people don't care about most things most of the time. And I'm sure you've experienced that, Dougie, being on the road when you're like, oh, I have a gig here. And then the next day someone's like, oh, Dougie, when you come into town? And they're like, oh, I missed it or whatever. Most people are kind of in their circle, in their zone. So to say most people do anything other than, go to their job and eat dinner is really much. Most people are in their bubble, and most people just it's just not even on their radar, and they appreciate American culture and things, but even the places that have been directly negative affected by American intervention, you get over things pretty quickly because you got your own shit to deal with.
That's good point.
Totally fair. To me, I think the rest of the world is not unfairly, but disproportionately focused on us more than we are them, right? The rest of the world, every other country, including us, every country on the planet focuses on
Yeah.
two things: themselves and America. We are the focal point of the globe. What happens here dictates what happens everywhere else, financially, culturally, entertainment wise.
Mm.
So the rest of the world is all looking at their stuff. Hey, this is what it's like to live in Canada. And then they go, also, I have to process America. So what ends up looking, and like we don't think about Japan, or, maybe me and Brian do more than other people, but the average American doesn't have an opinion on Belgium. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They just don't. So the rest of the world just kind of has to make a binary: I either like America or I don't. And we end up hearing the loudest ones, which are the ones who hate it. And that's what it
Yeah.
looks like on Twitter and social. They got to
Yeah.
have an opinion.
A microcosm is Florida, because Florida has some very open laws in terms of being able to have laws, stories,
bath
or
salts and
news
live on a
stories
bridge.
that go into politics. Well, that stuff too, but I think that stuff even gets overcompensated for the fact that because Florida has such open laws in terms of the media and following criminal news reports, that it gets a lot of attention. America has very open media, stuff like Wake Up Late for Dougie, or whatever news or whatever podcast that you get your information from. Because of that, it creates its own sort of vacuum of information and news, and a lot of other places just don't have that sort of flow. And it comes from the size of America, and it comes from that sort of spirit of we don't give a shit.
Right. Well, and also I think the people who hate America are always the people who hate some idea of America. They don't actually hate
Right.
America because they've never been to America. And you're like, if you just came,
Yeah.
there's so many reasons. Go to Detroit. Like, you can hate America. There's reasons.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
not the ones they.
Exactly. Go to San
Detroit's doing
Francisco.
better.
Go take a nice barefoot walk in the streets of San Francisco and tell us how much you like.
There you go. Acupuncture.
Yeah, yeah, and it's free. And the hepatitis C you get with it. I had this theory about America that I've named San Francisco, I've named Portland, and I'm trying to think what the other one was. It's as our modern day ghost towns in this country in the next 7 to 10 years. We're gonna have modern day ghost towns in this country, definitely on its way.
They said the same thing about New York in the 70s when they had white flight there, and then it gets cleaned up. Those major metropolitan areas have had their ups and downs. I think they'll be okay.
Well, even like LA, I mean, people, listen, people are leaving California in droves, and and now they're talking about reparations. But it's never going to pass that. I don't think it's ever. But they're saying that people have to pay some sort of reparation. So if you want to live in California, you got to make $8.9 million a year so that you can clear $50,000 a year. It's a tough gig. But LA, because of the movies, the weather, and all kinds of shit, that'll keep a contention. New York is similar because of all the things but a lot of the financial stuff has moved to Florida and Miami. Many of the financial major firms.
We only have like 50 or 100 years worth of America being situated like that, right? Like there being these big focal points, like New York being New York. And I think it's kind of like bar districts in any other city, right? You're like, oh, it used to be hot downtown. Now it's hot off Washington Avenue. Then it's hot over here in Midtown. America's just, San Francisco. What happened in San Francisco, or what's always taken place there in New York or anywhere else, it may not happen there anymore, but that stuff just moves. It's kind of like the flood of people to Austin right now. That's just the new Silicon Valley, really.
Yeah. Like you watch some film noir movies that take place in San Francisco and LA, and it shows them as being just complete dumps. Or one of my favorite films is called Downtown 81, and it with Keith Haring and Basquiat and all those guys, and it shows New York as just a wasteland. And by all means, with crack and everything else, there were some big issues, but now New York is New York again.
Well, I think it's a little trouble, to be honest with you. But here's the thing: I think there is a migration of people. I'm in South Carolina now from Florida. And why did I leave?
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, I left. It's really nice in the summer not to worry about a hurricane blowing your house over. I'll be honest with you. So that's a nice freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And my homeowner's insurance being $1,000 instead of $10,000 a year, that's also good. So these things will change. People will move, and these things will gradually change. And speaking of Florida, the NAACP and of course the LGBTQ have deemed Florida dangerous. Be careful. You're gonna die if you go to Florida. interesting concept. Nevertheless, ranks in the at a 50 out of 50 states, it ranks somewhere in the top 40 of hate crimes. So it's just interesting that we're seeing a day and age where
Florida should warn people about going to Florida. It should be part of their. It should just be part of their outreach program. Hey guys, just come on in, but also here's a list of, you know what I mean, things to pay attention to.
I think that's a great point.
That stuff is hyperbolic.
Yeah, I think it's a great point.
That stuff is hyperbolic. Just like when people say people hate Americans, people say the same thing about traveling different places. On a one-to-one basis, everyone gets fucking along. It's cool.
Well, you got to look at a place like Florida too. You can't just hate Florida. There's parts of it that are totally hateable, and then there's parts of it that are completely different. So the East Coast is different. The Panhandle is all hillbillies and people making meat in the swamps or whatever's going on, and then you get down and there's beach culture, and then you come around and everything's Cubano and there's music, and then you work your way back up and it's the working class of Jacksonville, and then you're into the East Coast. So it's like there's so many different parts. There are parts of Florida though that are 100% all responsible for those Florida man stories, and I think they all exist in a little semicircle outside of Orlando.
It's funny. Yeah, exactly. And you know what? I just think that, listen, I don't want to go back. I don't want to have swamp ass ever again. Florida, Brian and I were talking about that when I go back. I'm here in South Carolina. I have a condo in Florida, but I think, why would I go back to Florida? I'm at the point, like, why don't I just get a place in Vegas? So I want to do comedy on the West Coast. I got a place to just stop and spend a week or two, you know what I mean? And live out of there.
And America naturally moves you there in 30 years, right? So you're going back. That's everybody over 70 ends up there. That's the law.
Well, no. See, that's the thing. When you lived in Florida, I'd rather retire in Montana. Just go get a
They don't just snap you back like a 70-year-old rubber band, no matter how far you run.
It's the Florida bungee cord. Here in the Carolinas, they call us what they call halfbacks, because people leave New York, they'll go down to Florida and they come back up. They call people halfbacks. But I'm like, yeah, dude, but I love it. It's nice out. I heard it's swamp ass in Florida today. So, all right, let me get a couple other quick questions to ask you guys on. Here's a great question I got to ask you. Is Lizzo sexy, Brian Offenther? Is Lizzo sexy? Come on. She pushed a bunch of stuff out there in her tape bathing suits and stuff and saying, listen, I know I weigh 5,000 pounds, but I'm sexy. Okay. I'm just asking that question. I'm not asking if she's smart, intelligent. Is she fucking sexy?
What I would say is let me make a connection here. I would say that the recently deceased Tina Turner was pretty when she was younger, but she maintained a sexiness even when she was older. And I think that sexiness is very much an attitude. And I don't necessarily find Lizzo attractive, but some of her songs can be sexy. And sure, she's pushing outrage and getting attention, but as a pop star, that's kind of her job. But I would agree that when it gets to the point of unhealthiness, it's not necessarily the best thing to promote. But she's doing her job, pissing people like old South Carolinians off. So. Yeah, but it is what it is.
Oh, she's sexy adjacent, but no, she's not. She can be on in the background, but the girl lying down, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I am open to any and all things, but little me is sizest. So
Yeah, and you really need some deep sea drilling equipment to get to that fucking to get to the.
I've never been in there. I don't know if you need spelunking gear. I don't know if you need, I don't know what the actual equipment need is, but I imagine you can't just go you can't show up in a pair of Tevas and think you're going to make it down that mountain.
Yeah, exactly, dude. That takes a lot of work, man. What is the word? Fracking. I may have to do some fracking to actually get the moisture when it came to me and her. Right, that's funny. Let's keep moving on. What is the worst car you ever owned? Let's start with you, Slade.
I had a car that I have a tendency to drive cars until they die. Like I don't think I've ever sold one of my cars. There's never been a moment where I am just the end of the supply chain for whatever cars are doing. I had my first car was a little 83 Accord, and I saved up all my lawn mowing money to buy it. And then I had it for a couple of months, and I got hit by a drunk driver going through a stoplight. And he spun the car around, and the whole brake light assembly just fell out of the back. And I ended up taking the car because they offered me, the insurance company paid for it. And then they were like, you could also pay a $200 salvage fee and just keep the car. And I was like, well, it still starts. So I went and put a little boat trailer motor in the torn up wreckage of the back. And it was so cool from behind. It had one regular brake light, and then it had one round, looked like an eye coming out of this torn up fender. And it just looked like the Terminator in the dark. And I drove that damn car until I threw a rod through the oil pan. I think I went 15,000 miles without changing the oil finally. I did everything I could to kill that car, and it finally just gave up the ghost.
Wow.
Rest in peace, Terminator.
It's great seeing those cars that have like, Bob's Barricade as their fucking right rear taillight. Brian?
Oh, I mean, I never liked having a car. Like I had a Sentra for a while when I was in Gainesville. Like one thing living in Shanghai is I don't need a car. I got the subway system. I can bike around, and there's high speed rail all around China. So, and I'm trying to remember the last time I was on. It was either right before or right after I did a Greyhound bus trip from Florida to California.
Yeah,
stopping along the way doing gigs. And I love that sort of thing. I just don't. I like going places, but I've never liked the act of driving and owning a car and that sort of pain in the ass thing. So,
I think
is there something past the passive nature of travel? Like, do you get stuff done when you're on a train or a bus? Is it creative for you, or is it just I just rather not be in charge of the car?
There's some in terms of being in charge of the car, and actually I do sometimes get car sick. I won't let it stop me at all. And like I don't necessarily get them as much done, but I just want to get to places. And I guess there's something in terms of the passiveness for it, in the sense that I would just rather deal with other things. I got other priorities. I got other stuff to deal with.
Interesting.
I just get anxiety driving and stuff.
That's true, because driving is about control. It's like I'm one of those people. I don't like being in a car with someone else. I don't know their capabilities. You know what I mean? I don't know. Especially if they start looking at their phone when they're driving. I get pissed. You know what I mean? But it's something about control too, right? But I think more and more people are turning into that. This autonomous driving thing that's on the way. We are not going to get into AI, which is a huge subject. But well, that was interesting. Okay, I don't know if I want to do this one.
My phone didn't like that.
Yeah, that was. I don't know if you saw the thing here in the States about Target. They put a big pride display in the front of Targets. The people in the southern states have gone nuts. What the fuck is going on? God damn it! Got fucking a man's tucked bikini. You know what I mean? It's just people are fucking losing their mind. And here's the interesting thing, and without getting into too much exposure, because listen, I believe people do whatever the fuck you want. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I don't give a shit what you do, as long as you don't hurt anybody else, or you know what I mean, and don't infringe on other people. But God Almighty, like what, like where have we, like, I don't know, how am I trying to put this? Isn't it amazing? There's a lot of people that are telling me they feel like they never had anything about gay people, but they're saying that I just feel like every fucking moment of my life, it's being pushed down my throat. Every like it's, what I mean? Why is it just not something that exists? Why do I always got to see it in my fucking face? Why does everybody got to keep telling me I got to be this way about it? Why, it's almost a little like, you know what I mean?
Well, but I mean, how are you supposed to market to a gay audience? Like if you have aspirations of selling, like why does the marketing have to be to everybody? Why can't you have segmented marketing like anywhere else, where it's like, hey, the Bud Light thing was amazing to me. Like the amount of the level to which you'd have to dig to even actually find out what they did for that trans athlete is just, it's interesting to me. It's like the only reason is because you went and found it to get mad. And then they go, oh, I can't believe you'd market to these people, Target or Bud Light or anybody else. You're just sort of like, well, they're marketing to them too. That's all. It's just two.
Yeah.
Well, it's not like they changed their whole ad campaign forever.
Well, yeah, there's a couple things with that. Number one, like for example, Doug, you sent us a news story from Fox News. So yeah, with a Fox News story, and the opening line is "critics say," and those are the same critics that appear on Fox News. It's a way of amplifying their own sort of news cycle, which I kind of understand. And with the critics, they're going after Dylan McVaney, that person, and as an influencer. But it's not like this is the entire face of Bud Light. It's one of
Right.
dozens of influencers and people, and some are going to appeal to some people, and some are going to appeal to others, and who cares?
Well,
Wow.
it's also though, I don't think there's a whole lot of real world um kerfluffle about any of this. Like you said, it is this sort of circular internal argument. I think probably 90% of us live in a very realistic bubble, and we have a good idea of what the world is and how it should work, and we know what's outside the boundaries and what isn't, and we self-police pretty well. And then I think there's probably 5% on either side that just likes chirping about it. There's nobody's stopping buying Bud Light. Nobody stopped buying North Face. I think they were the latest one today. Nobody stopped doing any of this stuff. It's just the desire to be a little loud. And those people, the 90% of us in the middle, don't really take seriously because they're saying things like, why can't I bring my gun to a quinceanera? And if you don't let your transvestite friend marry you or deliver your baby, then you're racist or something like that. And you just got to accept the fact that those people are nuts. They're on the outside. They're not real. The rest of us are just sort of like, oh, yeah, cool. Bud Light supports everything. These guys support everything. I'm going to keep wearing this jacket, and I'm going to keep going out and drinking what I drink. I'm not really going to have any there's nothing coming from that.
Well,
They're
there's
just
two things I want
loud.
to point out. I want to point out, first of all, that the people aren't, you said nobody's not drinking. It's cut, the stock is dropped. Not only that, it's been notably down. And this is just not
We'll be
from a
right back.
political. This is not from. We'll see. Well, you never want to see anybody lose work over something like this. But first of all, I've never drank Bud Light. I was always a Coors Light guy for a long time, and that kind of thing. So, and I don't even
They
drink
did a
beer
bunch of
anymore.
gay stuff too. You better stop it. They're all gay
Listen,
beers.
here's the thing I don't mind. Like, as a person, I don't, I see it and I'm like, whatever, I don't really care. Images and stuff don't influence my power and my energy. You know what I mean? I don't, I still go the way I get. But my point is that I do see, for a certain perspective, that it's like, to me, when I think of things, when I watch Dylan Mulvaney and the things that this guy does, I'm like, it's all like a child to me. Here's a grown man acting like a child. So that's the thing that irritates me when I see this guy. I'm like, oh my God, acting like a young girl. I mean, it's like insulting to the girls, but that's my opinion of it. It's like art. He's like an artist. He's like a performer. That's the way I look at it. It's not something I would turn on. You know what I mean? It's not. These aren't jokes that I even think funny. And so the fact, I agree with you that, listen, this guy wasn't like the spokesperson for Bud Light, and on there all the time, and and the Clydesdale is just like going, what the fuck's wrong with us? I don't know if that's what we're talking about either. But at the same time, there's with this whole thing about it is just, it's made, whether you want to talk about it or not. I'm not even talking about Fox News. I look up news every day for stories and things I need to read to edify, and everything's about trans this, trans that, trans. I'm like, what the fuck?
But if you take all the stories if you take all the stories off the table, just if you remove the stuff you're reading, and then walk out the door and go into the real world, like what's out there that everybody's so afraid of? Because I've been out there,
Go touch
and
grass.
I just don't see.
Yeah.
I don't see the same things in the real
Well,
world.
I do have a friend that had
I
I do have a friend that was at a school that they had a drag show, thing, and it was the guy. Listen, I would like that. If that was my kid, I'd pull the kid out of the school because I wouldn't
So how
want
many?
that.
So wait, let me ask that then. That's what I'm looking at. That's what I'm looking for, right? So who was it? It was how many degrees of separation from?
I mean, somebody I speak to probably several dozen times a year. I see once or twice a year. I know through circles of people.
And then their kid had to go to a drag show.
Yeah, they were at the school, and they had an assembly thing, and they did it, and the video that actually was two of his kids were there. One of his children filmed it, and it was bending over. It was sexually explicit dance. It wasn't dancing around like so it was out of line. So so that right there. So it's like, first of all, the whole idea of this, because drag queens, drag shows. My parents are from Spain. Huge thing. They love watching the drag shows, and they're a great level of entertainment. It's fun to go watch. But just as much as I'm not taking my fucking 6-year-old to 3-year-old to fucking Hooters, I'm sitting them at the bar with me, or I'm taking them to a gentleman's club, or especially in a school. It's like, so I think that I always say, going back to my Deadwood days, HBO series I love, Deadwood, and you're riling up the fucking hoople heads. If you, it's almost like purposely. It almost feels like purposely that we're trying to rile up the fucking hoople heads, and everybody's enjoying this. Let's try to piss off people and shit, as opposed to, I just want everybody to get along. Like you said, I want to walk outside. I don't give a fuck. You know what I mean? I mean, how many men have I run into? How many women have I run into the men's bathroom? I've never.
So, but here's the thing. When and I'm speaking completely out of context. I don't have kids. I don't have, none of this is my responsibility. So I think about this almost none.
Right.
I can get to all the other things I don't think about either, because I don't think about almost anything. But in this case, if I had a kid, there's a part of me that feels like, okay, they're constantly going to be out in the world running into things that are unfamiliar to them, things that they don't have context for, things that they need to contextualize. So I feel like as a parent, I'd constantly be answering these questions. What was that? Well, let me give you what I think it is, and let me give you some meaning and some things like that. And I probably don't agree with drag shows in schools just on the surface. But I also am like, if that is capable of breaking your entire relationship with your child and everything you've instilled upon them and all of the beliefs and values that you've tried to guide them to, and it's all been dismantled by a 20-minute book reading in school, then maybe the parenting was flawed in the first. Maybe there's a lot of other discussions that need to be had in addition.
Well, there might be. It's not just one incident. It's the question of it growing and more of the push of it and
here's a parallel. Well, here's a parallel, and especially because I see a lot of those news stories coming out of Tennessee. And one of my big beefs with Slade, because we have some serious issues to talk about, is
lots of them,
especially when those are generated out of Tennessee, and they're talking about the sexualizing of the youth and gender bending issues as well. When it comes out of Tennessee, which was the second home of Mr. Elvis Presley, when the exact same things were said about this guy with the longer hair, wearing the hot pink, and shaking his pelvis. Literally, some of the quotes can be transposed from 1956 when he signed with RCA Records to 2022, where he's bringing sexuality to children who should be in church or should be getting a more conservative form of education there. I find that the parallels there are exactly the same.
You ultimately end up
a parent in 1956 saying that Elvis shouldn't be allowed in your kids' schools, and you pull him out of your school if his rock and roll sexual racial mixing sort of wokeness was put into your kids' schools?
Because it all comes down to people feeling like it's us going, hey, the things that I'm comfortable being around and the way I'm comfortable having my life is being changed a little bit. It's morphing around me, and I don't want that to happen. I don't want any of the things that make me comfortable to disappear. So it's been like this forever. What you're saying about the 50s and 60s was the same thing in the 80s, the same thing in the 90s. Every generation, the reason I know that the good old days sucked too was because they had good old days. That's the people in the 80s were like, remember when it was good old days back in the 50s, and the 50s were like, remember the 20, well, maybe not the 20, but there were, parts that you're just constantly looking back and back and back. And I think this is just another one of those, things are changing around me. It's my generational obligation to scream and yell and bitch.
Get off my yard.
It goes back. You can read Mae West plays. And she was around from the 1920s on. And she's talking about being nostalgic for the gay 90s. What were the gay 90s? It was the 1890s. And they called it that. No, that's an exact quote. They were called the gay 90s. Yep. And she was nostalgic for that period where there was the good old days.
Yep. Well, let me add to this. Let me add to this about the concern of progression and once it reaches a line that should not have been crossed. I agree with you. Back in the day, in Elvis, 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds, the teenage girls were being cut. What are you doing? Why are you getting all hot and bothered over this guy? I get it. And then we get into the 70s, 80s, and now we're talking about condoms and free love and blah, blah, blah. And that now, now we're in a day and age where we're talking about 8, 9-year-olds, people in third grade, second grade being taught about homosexuality, let's say that alternative lifestyle, any type of sexuality, let's say. It's the old joke. A lot of comics talk about, back in the day, 20 years ago, if you wanted to watch porn, you had to get a film projector out of your dad's fucking closet and put the real, put the 8mm in there and roll it. And hopefully you had 30 minutes to unpack it if your parents came home. Now you just get on a phone, you can get, gangbang porn, sister-in-law's fucking, family. So, there's a level of perversion when it comes to society. Perversion is when basically taboo type things are entered into the mind too early, because then listen, you guys still jerk off to this day. Listen, guys, that's the first perversion a guy has. You find out, that's nice, and then you never stop. You don't stop jerking
that's
off.
The first. You don't, but that's also the first thing that any new media latches onto, right? It's societally we are dark, twisted people. But the minute videotapes came out, the shift went instantly from magazines to porn moved into it. Then DVDs came out and porn was all over that. As soon as the internet came out, they were just finding ways to, and that's any new medium is just going to go straight to that first, and it's going to permeate the base layer. And I think we've been like that since inception.
But my thing is that the level of perversion has gone from, let's say, 10, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, age 16, 15, 17. Now it's getting to the point where it's 8, 9, 7. I had a stepdaughter when she was 9. I told my wife, I go, we have to have a birds and the bees discussion with her. She's like, oh, she's too young. I go, no, she's not. Not with these kids. I taught karate. I taught soccer. So I saw these kids, talking about this.
That is ultimately what I guess I'm getting at, is that these are inevitable conversations. These kids there's going to be some, I'm not saying that it should happen at this age, but I'm saying, I think as a parent, you have to accept the fact that you are going to intersect with their exposure to these things in the real world. And that's now is no different than back then, right? Yeah. You were either going to find a magazine in the woods, or you were going to turn on the internet and just wait for a second, or whatever it is now where it's being flung at you so fast on TikTok and social and all these other formats. But I think as a parent, you just need to be prepared to have those conversations and probably make the stances you can make locally, where if they were doing this down at my school, maybe I would go down there and have a conversation with the school about a specific incident. But when I see a lot of America upset and just watching their head all of Twitter over stuff that they've never encountered, are unlikely to encounter, and are just sort of, like you said, they're whatever you call them, Twitter heads, bobbleheads, whatever they are. People just
Poople
the
heads.
populist people mad at the fact poople heads. People mad at the fact that they've been led to anger. That's really, it's just
Well, interesting. Let me just say this real quick. Because when it comes down to it, people are just not, because it's a funny meme that's out there, but like people getting mad about Dylan Mulvaney on a Bud Light can. The same people that are saying, why are you getting mad about that? Why are you getting mad about it? The same people that had to change Miss Butterworth bottles. You know what I mean? It's the same. It's a symbolism in these things that people are making outrageous. Like, which same thing you're saying? How outrageous is it? How outrageous?
Well, but that goes both ways. And I'm not even saying that I'm far from liberal or conservative, but both ways. You could say that the people who were going, damn it, you shouldn't boycott syrup just because of this, are the ones boycotting Bud Light. It's both sides are equally as hypocritical.
Well, it's a game that these mass mobs are playing now. This is the game that has started because of what's happened, and now people are learning, well, you know what? Fuck it. I don't like what I'm seeing, so guess what I'm going to do?
You can opt out.
Exactly. That 100% agree with that. And when you go the wrong way in terms of repression, and you go to places like Japan where there's a lot of sexual repression, things will pop out. You cannot put your fingers in the dam. The places that look for the most gay porn are the places that are the most religiously conservative. We know those things. And the same way that things can be overexpressed when they're underexpressed, when they're repressed, that can be just as harmful to people as well. And I'm sure we all know people who have been in those situations.
Yeah,
And I
good
think there's a
point.
societal pendulum too that swings, and we are now on the overcorrection of the last correction, and this will correct
We
as well. You start to see it especially in stand-up comedy or in film or in TV or in all these other mediums that are just pushing back a little bit in a weird way, and that's not for good or bad. It's just how society works. This is how we reach equilibrium.
Dougie, we're Floridians. Florida orange juice used to be represented by who was the woman? Anita
Anita
Bryant?
Bryant. Anita Bryant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, she was a ultra conservative woman in Florida representing Florida orange juice. Who knows that? You and I know that. I'm a nerd. I know those things. He has no idea about that. Do you think anyone's going to give a shit about who's representing Bud Light in 20 years, in 10 years? No. It's going away.
1 year.
Yeah. There you go. All right. Well, I think we did a good job with let me ask you. You guys can ask me something, but fuck it, we ran out of time to ask me any question. You know what I'm saying? So let's.
How do you feel about Bud Light, Dougie? That's what
Listen, I don't drink that piss water. Honestly, I have lost 30. I broke under 200. I'm going to be in the 230 range. I was 278 about 3-4 months ago. I'm down to 239, 240 right now. So beer is not on my
Nice.
my daily consumption list.
Congratulations.
But heroin
Get
is
you
high
back
now,
in the kickboxing ring.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know
But
about
cocaine will drop 40 pounds in 3 months.
That's right. But just give me a $20 bill and a 8-ball. Well, this is one of the let's start with the first story. Critics explode over U.S. Navy's use of a drag queen to solve recruiting crisis. It's interesting that it's funny when you watch like the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd, I'm trying to remember the fellow that talks like this, the big black guy. He was asked in a hearing, what's going on? He's like, I have no idea what's going on. It's just so funny. I guess the simple comedic question would be, do you think a transgender, she's a transgender woman, right? Yeah, a guy who thinks okay. So he's a transgender woman. Do you think it's going to be effective to get people into military? I mean, either way, do we think it's going to work?
If you're recruiting
This
the
is not a new
bravest of the
thing.
brave, if you're recruiting the bravest Americans, I think where else should you look other than the drag community?
Great point.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine a bunch of guys?
There's lots of pageantry.
There's a lot.
Marching bands, everything else.
Imagine they're jumping over the bunker. They're coming. They're attacking the beach, and all of a sudden it's a bunch of guys in fucking bustiers and fucking high heel shoes with, oh, you can't shoot them. Somebody pull up a seat. Let's watch this fucking show. You never know.
There's uniforms and face paint, and there's a lot of
the uniform will never be tighter.
Yeah, there you go.
Just
green's
prim
not our
and
color.
Proper and you can do your makeup in the shoes. You can just
green is not our color anymore, boys. Adidas Pride 2023 women's swimsuit appears to be a model by a man. I don't know if you saw the photo, but it's a dude with a hairy chest wearing a fucking bikini. Now, like you said, Slade, I saw the picture, I saw the story. I'm like, okay, well, I wouldn't buy this article. I wouldn't buy this publication. You know what I mean? Like, if this dude's wearing a one piece, I'm like, okay, would I buy? Would I in the same vein? Would I buy the swimsuit, the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue with what's her name, Martha Stewart in there?
Martha Stewart,
fucking 80s. Yeah, she's. Yeah. So listen, I don't want to see a dude in a fucking bathing suit, and I don't want to see Martha Stewart.
Fair. You got to look up. This is my take on the whole. I looked at it and I went, well, that's clearly not meant for me. And then I just moved on. I just sort of shrugged and went, well, that's not for me. And then I went that way.
It's a libertarian position. I don't necessarily find it progressive necessarily. Just if this is what's going, they're going to try to make money. If that's what's going to help them make money, they're going to do that. And just like with the last news story as well, this goes back in history. You can look up Christine Jorgensen, who was a U.S. military man who then transgendered to a woman. This is going back 100 years now. And the same thing with this. There's bloomers that women shouldn't wear pants.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's the whataboutism. Let people wear whatever the fuck they want to wear.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, here's an interesting story. Prolific sperm donor with over 500 children must pay $110,000 if he donates any more sperm. I mean, this guy's got a hobby, obviously, right? I mean, this guy's got to fuck. Some people collect stamps.
Spreading the love.
You know, I mean, 500 fucking kids.
But it's they're threatening to fine him $110,000 if he donates again. Which I did the math real quick, and I figure at $100 a throw, he's gonna get fined basically double what he's made in his entire career.
Yeah.
But the fact that there's two things of note. One, the guy just basically decided that the Dutch can't stop him. That's a Dutch law.
He's a pirate.
He's just in other countries doing it now, which indicates that he can't stop. This man has we're gonna find you 110,000, and I just picture him on the first bus out of Europe, just furiously trying to hold it in until he gets out of the Shenzhen region or whatever it is he's doing. Two,
my big issue is donate.
Yeah,
you're calling it donation. Yeah, Dougie's been a charity man for 40, 50s. How many years have you been doing?
If you bring
work,
one more
Dougie?
bag of clothes to this Goodwill, one more bag of clothes, we're gonna find you.
I mean,
there is a Dutch law that someone on the, I don't know, House of Representatives, Parliament, they sat down and had to discuss out loud amongst humans for a prolonged period of time how much sperm a donor could give and how many children. Oh, you're allowed to have 25 children with a maximum of 12 mothers. They hemmed and hawed about this for how long? It was 30 for a while. And they go, no, you go down to 25, but you can only do it through 12 women. Just get a sock, you poor Dutch dude. Just get a sock.
Yeah, get a fleshlight. Leave it in that. Yeah, dude. I mean, you walk into a town, you're like, hey, you
wear two socks every day, Dutch guy. You have them. Even if you're wearing wooden shoes, you probably still have socks.
Yeah, there you go. Next story: lottery players tries to work after jackpot win in Iowa. That lasted about 5 minutes. Yeah, I know a lot of people that I've managed money for a living for 33 years, and I still do. And there's a lot of I have some clients who had won the lottery. And a couple of them had said, "Yeah, I'm going to go to work, regular guy." And then a day in it, what happened? I told my boss to go fuck himself. Okay, that's what you do when you got $10 million in an account. So, I guess the question is, if you won an exorbitant amount of money, and I'm asking Brian because I don't think he's not about money. If you had won an exorbitant amount of money, would you quit your job?
No, I take the position that I think Slade does as well, that I'm doing what I really enjoy doing. I remember at some point I was buying up a lot of dollar store sunglasses. I used to work in the Coral Square Mall at the dollar store, going back to the CS people there. And people would say, don't you wish you could afford nicer sunglasses? I was like, no. If I had more money, I would just buy more dollar store sunglasses. The same thing with traveling around and DJing. It's what I enjoy doing. That's what I like. I'm sure there would be some lifestyle changes, some grinds that I wouldn't want it to deal with, but for the most part, I'm doing the exact same thing.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. That's 100%. And I wouldn't quit anything over $21,000. I feel like it's not like he won $3 million. He didn't win some life-changing amount. He won change your transmission amount. Like that's barely enough money to go get a car fixed. And the best part about it all, I read the story. I glossed over the story. I always get entranced by the comments, and it's where everybody just has taken the small amount of time to give their financial advice. It is just, it's so,
going for your job, Dougie. So
us to just come in and find the comment section of something about a dude we've never met doing an activity we're never going to see, having an impact on us that's never going to happen. And we still got to stop and go, you need X amount of money because you're going to have to set 30% aside for taxes and the other percent. So when it's all done, you're really only walking away with $12,374. You're like, bro, go back to work.
Dude, I got into a back. I think this is a discussion when they were trying to raise the minimum wage and shit. And I got into a financial discussion with a fellow comic, and he doesn't know my background. He's like, "Oh, well, listen, you don't seem to really understand economics." And I'm like, "What the fuck? You know what I mean? Like I'm a licensed fiduciary. You stupid toad fucking smoker. And it was funny because I looked at the
I knew
stock
what
and I
4
go,
of those words meant.
yeah, toad smoker. But I said, look, I go, you got fired from fucking Uber. Who are you to give advice on? You know what I mean? It's like getting diet advice from a 450-pound fucking triple chinned. It's like, and how many? Yeah, as a comic, let me ask you, Slade, have you ever gotten advice from a comic who's never left the geographic area
Oh,
they're doing
yes.
stand up in?
Yes. I get advice from comics from people who've never left. I also get socio-political advice. It's people who are experts on Eastern European politics and people who are experts on the debt crisis and people who are experts on gender and people who are experts on all of these things that they're experts on every single day. And they're just shooting advice right into my face. And I'm just like, I don't even need 90% of this. And I know you don't know 100% of this. So what are we doing in this exchange?
Yeah, good point.
Stop with the advice. Well, I'll figure it out. The young comics, just like anybody else, man. You're talking on a turn. You can always tell.
Yeah. Brian, anything to add to that?
No, yeah. Yeah, I think you really nailed it. Everyone's got an opinion on things. It's free to give out, but following through things is a whole other thing. Glenn Greenwald in the news stories, he talks about they're having these now misinformation experts, which is an expertise that doesn't even exist. So it's easy just to spot out whatever you want to say.
It's nuts, isn't it? All right, so there was a couple stories left here. Oh, we have to go to this story. Forget the spider. Woman accused of drugging date in Miami, stealing $600,000 in jewelry. She's a prostitute. If you want to look up this story, look it up. There's a video of her in the elevator with the poor dude. And tell anybody want to argue with me that she's not a prostitute. That she's a prostitute.
The chances are high. There's other ways to steal from somebody too. I'm a fan of the gypsy dog technique, where you train the dog to eat the jewelry and then you sell it to the person, and then they bring the dog home and the dog eats the jewelry and then they run back to you. That's way more effective than solo cups full of what I assume is promethazine or something, whatever she used to knock this poor guy out in his hotel and steal $600,000 worth of jewelry. That's on you, bro. That's not, the safe was open. Come on, man. Don't act like she got in there and Ocean 11'd you all by yourself. You were showing, look at this. Look what I got. Look what I got. Oh, can I get another sip of that? That's so delicious. Next thing you know, you're staring at your ceiling and she's $600K richer. Come on.
Yeah. Where's my shit?
Are we sure this isn't an insurance scam? Did the guy not have $600,000 that he owes, and now he's going to be able to recoup from that? She's got to do a couple of months in jail or whatever, and now he's got his money back, and everyone's happy.
Coincidentally, man who has $580,000 worth of gambling debt is robbed of $600,000 worth of jewelry.
Coincidence?
What's the connection?
Exactly. Let's go. Let's call it stupidity. Driver mad. Somebody honked at him, opens fire, and the person he opens fire on is a former police officer. If you're gonna get into road rage.
This is my thing. I don't think this is a police officer. If you read the article, it says public safety. What does it say? It doesn't say police
public
officer.
Safety officer.
Public safety officer, which can be a lot of things. Are you an actual cop? Are you animal control? Are you a security guard? You just one of those halt motherfuckers? Are you one of those dudes? Like, I don't know that I think this is just an angry guy who used to be some sort of officer and they found a way to write an article around that. This dude, for all we know, chaperoned kids' birthday party. You know what I mean? Just a public safety officer. He's the dude who stands by the little yellow sign in a Chipotle, making sure you don't slip and crack your noggin. That's all it is. It's former cop. Come on.
Yeah, he's the guy in the bank.
Officer.
He's the guy in the bank sleeping.
The dude with a whistle at a roller rink. Come on.
All right, our last story, and Brian's going to probably take lead because Brian knows about this. China fines comedy troupe $2 million for a joke about the military. You got to be careful about what jokes you tell in China.
I'm trying to figure out what angle I should take on this because I could talk about this a long time. the most direct thing I can say is that has had direct repercussions for me. I sent Dougie a WeChat message, a Weixin, which is a social media app, where shows have been canceled in China, not just in terms of stand up, but in terms of all entertainment, including some DJ gigs. None of my gigs were directly cut. They basically said a warning. Hey, if we have to cancel this, we're not going to pay you your fee. It's not our fault. Blah blah
Right.
blah. But other gigs, 100% have been canceled because the first thing that they do is they go over the foreigners, expats performing in China. Essentially, how China runs in a lot of ways is what I call the Casablanca principle. And the Casablanca principle is that the officer comes in one day and says, "There's gambling in this establishment," and shuts down Rick's Cafe American, where in fact everyone knows it's been there the entire time because there's just an uneasy agreement that things, in order for them to work, are going to have to happen illegally. You're not going to get every performance 100% vetted. So everyone knows those sort of things, and then people kind of toe up to the red line. I did reach out to comedy organizers here in Shanghai, in China, and they asked not to be named. I'm supposed to call them here a friend in comedy. And they take some different positions on it than I would, and I don't want to misrepresent them. See, like, I know Slade was compared to, I think, Hunter S. Thompson in his memoir there, his book of stories there. And I appreciate people like Lenny Bruce, who I have tattooed on my arm here, and that. But people who do comedy here full time, they really take the position that, hey, look, let's just avoid talking about certain things, and then we can get on with our gigs. And so this is a quote from my friend, and they said, the culture people are actually our friends. When the crunch comes and stuff gets stopped, it's a precaution. We should let them do what they need to do to stay out of trouble. We shouldn't just see everyone as the aggressor and spew this negativity at everything affecting us. It makes the road back a lot harder. People are just like everyone we talked about earlier. Most people don't care about most things. The people who do the cultural security jobs, they're just doing their jobs. I would take the position that's a sort of banality of evil, that it's not people doing negative active things, it's people just doing their job that causes issues. But I've talked on my soapbox here long enough. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well,
It's a I mean, for me, there's a lot of countries where incidents like this have bubbled up. China certainly being one. Canada, where a guy was fined or sued, or I forget how it went down over. I have to look back at the exact story over something he did to an audience member that was untoward. Something he said that made her feel uncomfortable, and there was a lawsuit involved. And yeah, it's for me. I just look at it as it's a if I am madly and deeply behind stand-up comics in places like China or places where free speech isn't the default setting, right? Like I'm just a free speech I don't want to apologize for it at all. I want to tell my jokes and say what I want to say, and I want to find the best place for me to do that. And I'm not necessarily in the realm of overthrowing the way governments think about speech. Like I'll do things that make sense if there was an opportunity to speak out against it or something. I'd want my name to be on the side of, hey, I think this is bullshit. But also, if I was a great stand-up comic and I was operating out of China, I'd just leave. I'd go find a place better than that to say the things I wanted to say, because the road doing it through China is gonna be difficult, right? You're in a communist country that has
and hindering. You can't, like you said, you can't. As a comic, you want to. It's like it's tough when I go to a show and they go, "Okay, I need you to be squeaky clean, church clean." I'm like, "Oh fuck," it's like, all right, how fun is this going to be?
So I think you'd have to take on the role of probably activist before comic, I think, because you just can't develop as if you just are looking at doing stand-up comedy in a vacuum, right? You want to get good at stand-up comedy, here's what you need. One of those lists of ingredients is absolutely a stage that you're free to do whatever you want on, because that's how you find the line. Stand-up is about playing around the line, and the way you get to the line is by stepping a foot over it and going, oh shit, that's where the line is. We're going to be right back here.
Right. Yeah, you said before that you're not an activist, that you're almost actively not an activist. You're an activist for non-activism, Slade. But when I think of the great comedians throughout history, Lenny Bruce, just any of them, George Carlin, I find that they are activists. And in fact, I kind of like stand-up comedians when they get the most angry and affected and even maybe lose sight of the pure comedy things. I love those late George Carlin
Oh yeah,
specials where it's you are all
the last
diseased. So yeah,
he lost and that became the later Carlin sort of became a lot like the later Bill Hicks and some of those other guys for me that were a little more philosophical and preachy than they were punchy and funny. And I like them more for those reasons, where I'm like, that later Carlin, I don't know if I ever laughed out loud, but I was into it. And it's that level of activism is very cool to me. Lenny Bruce had a different fight to fight than I had to fight. Early Carlin had a different fight to fight. It's Bill Hicks that's so awesome. Bill Hicks had a different fight to fight. And now these comics have a different fight to fight. And I'm able to look at it from the standpoint of, all right, I got stuff to say, and should the need arise where I've got to defend stand-up comedy and our right to do this, I will. But right now, I don't feel like I'm in this shaky cancel culture, weird, uneven ground that everyone says we're in. I feel like I'm pretty allowed. I wrote an entire special that says all the things I want to say, and I'm able to go on stage and perform it, and I'm about to record it, and it's all exactly what I want. And there's nothing in there where I'm like, oh, I had to take that out because we just live in that society that won't let me do it. It's actually, I'm capable of not just saying the stuff I want to say, but even the stuff they don't want me to say, because we live in a world where I'm allowed to do it if I'm clever about it. So I just, poor Chinese guy.
Key to the clever part. I told a comic, newer comic recently, because he told that he thinks it's a great cancer joke, and it's not. And I said, dude, if you're gonna tell a joke about rape or cancer, it's got to be fucking really funny and something no one's ever heard. Other than that,
any joke, any joke's got to start there. If you don't start with "Is this funny?" then your point or your soapbox or your message, all that can get fucked. Value. We're stand-up comics, bro. It's you got to be that first. Otherwise, go do a TED Talk.
It's difficult to witness that kind of stuff. All right. That's our segment. Did you hear a few other things? But here's the thing: we're going to close on our show. Let's associate. This is where I bring up a word. They're all words today, and you guys either share a first thought, first expression, story quickly. But each of you guys will rotate on the word, and I'm going to start with Brian. The word is willingly.
Willingly. Willingly, I am heading on the road this weekend. Willingly. It's all about will. It's all about what you desire and what you want to do, and that's the philosophy that I kind of live by. Yeah. I don't know. What do you think?
There's no right answer. Slade?
Oh, same word? Oh, shit. I thought I was getting out of that one. I didn't have an answer. Willingly. Very few things. I am, there's only a couple of things that I allow inside of my circle of stuff I want to do. And I'm narrowing that down by the day. So willingly, very few things comes to mind.
Gotcha. You'll be first this time. Provocative.
Ooh. Lizzo. Back to her.
There you go.
In a minute, I'm gonna need anyway.
Here's provocative. I DJ'd my first kink party in Bangkok. I had my first gig doing at a swingers event there. Thailand is going off the rails now because they've legalized marijuana there. So it's become the real party central going on. And there was all sorts of interesting things going on. I had a wonderful time there. And so it was certainly a provocative experience in the first time. There's an old showbiz bit that if you haven't performed naked at some point in some sort of context, you're not really.
Yeah. I think Flea from the Chili Peppers said that. Your first this time, Brian. Earth-shattering.
Earth-shattering. Earthquakes, moving things around, earth-shattering. I hope I don't get my earth shattered around me when I do my first pro wrestling event coming up. Earth-shattering. Yeah. That's all I got. I'm just excited to say my YouTube channel, ArtScale, we just hit 500,000 subscribers. All about
Nice.
Mongolia, something I never thought would hit. So, that's some
Nice.
earth-shattering news recently.
That's
So,
huge.
earth-shattering.
yeah.
Slade.
Earth-shattering. Lizzo. That's going to be my answer for everything.
When she drops down into that split.
Earth-shattering is one of those. It's overused. That's what I'm going to go with. I put it in the same category as awesome and break the
Amazing.
internet and all these other hyperbolic things that we just throw out. That's so earth-shattering. No, she just crossed the street on her own. It's really not.
Let me go back. I saw the earth shatter when I did something. I wanted to tell Slade this. I think you're going to be really disappointed in Dougie about this, because I got some beef with Dougie too. The very first time I went on Wake Up Late for Dougie, I got the news when I was doing a DJ tour in Vietnam. He talked about Hunter S. Thompson before, we referenced that. I was in Da Nang, Vietnam, and I took a colossal hit of LSD. I was along the beach. And I'm sure I saw the earth shatter more than once or twice. And I called a little motorbike taxi guy, and I went through the jungle to where they have the Golden Bridge, that crazy looking hand bridge you might have seen online. And I was out of my head. Like, if I wasn't actually on the hand bridge, if I didn't have proof, I wouldn't have been able to really testify that. And I filmed a promo audio and video for Dougie on the bridge. Like, I'm holding on to my hat. I am high out of my skull. And Dougie never used it. He never used that promo video. And I even sent that to him. I was in Da Nang, Vietnam, and I just wanted to mention that. And that goes back 2 visits before. And so, yeah, if you were having that earth-shattering appearance, you should have done it.
I think that just made us best friends, Brian. And 2, he probably didn't use the video because it's just you going, oh my God.
I'm going to resend it to Dougie. He can repost it. It's a promo from 2 visits ago to the Wake Up Late for Dougie show.
I can smell colors.
We've talked about dangerous experiences before, like going on a little motorbike behind a guy holding on through the jungle in Vietnam was a wonderful experience. It was one of the better experiences I've ever had on the road.
Well, if you resend it, I'll post it before the show airs tomorrow. All right, our last one, fellas, because I'm about to earth shatter my underwear because I'm going to piss in my pants. The last word is deservant.
Oh, I wish I had one so the servant could bring me some more coffee. Right?
The servant.
I can't believe I did that. I just dad joked it.
Did Lizzo have too much deservance after her dinner?
How did Lizzo get so fat? She ate all dessert. There's a.
Damn it. Dylan Mulvaney, deserving to be called a woman. Well, that being said, fellas, that's all we have time for here on the Wake Up Late with Dougie show. I want to thank my good friend and regular guest, Mr. Brian Offenther, joining us today. And, of course, Slade Ham. Slade, why don't you go ahead and talk about the special and real quick, and then of course Brian will close what we've got going on all over in Shanghai and in China.
Yeah, I'm shooting a brand new comedy special called Signal to Noise. The Kickstarter campaign is up and running right now. We're like 80-something%, and there's still a week or so to go. I'm very confident in it, but if you'd like to be part of it, I'm giving away some cool stuff. I'll put your name in the credits. There's a copy of my book. There's digital stuff. You'll be in the playbill. There's all sorts of things. I'd love to have people be part of it. There's some really cool producers on board that I can't really talk about, but they're good people, and I'm excited about it. So if you want to be part of it, go do it. And then check out my YouTube page. It's probably the only place on social that I'm still super active and excited about. And I think there's some good stuff there at Slade Ham.
I also want to mention that I started reading Until All the Dragons Are Dead, which features quotes from Christopher Titus and Scarface of the Ghetto Boys. I haven't read the whole thing yet, but I'm really enjoying it. So definitely check that out.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. And I promised a stand-up comedian that I met up with in the Philippines, Anad Rahman, who's a comedian in Dubai. I'd give him a shout out. So shout out to you, Anad. Please check out Artger, Artger. It's a YouTube page all about Mongolia that I started with some Mongolian friends out there. That's doing really well. And every Sunday, I host a live stream. It's called the Critical Music Club, the CMC. It's an all rock and round table. It changed from musicians, DJs, music writers, and miscellaneous miscreants to meet and talk tunes. We've had some Texas legends like Little Juford from Kiki Friedman's band and all sorts of others. Just hit me up on social media. We got that going on. And shout out to you, Dougie. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thanks for being on, guys. And aside from that, I'm going to be in Gastonia, North Carolina tomorrow night at the Rooster. And then Friday night, I'm going to be in Anderson, South Carolina at the Palmetto Distillery, closing both shows. And after that, I'm going to be taking a little break, everybody. Got time spent with family. God bless all of you. Thank you so much for joining us. And be sure to follow our YouTube channel, the Wake Up Late with Dougie Show. Follow me at Dougie Almeida on my YouTube channel. And other than that, God bless, stay well, and we'll see you next time right here at the same spot.
Wake up. Wake up.